sex, dating, and relationships. Let's do this. So typically the first question about dating is it hard to meet people and establish connections if you're constantly moving around? And honestly, I would say, yeah, it is a little bit harder, but it's not impossible. And I mean, granted, it's not like you're gonna establish some sort of connection, like even a friendship with every single person you meet on the road, but the point is that it is possible to meet people, and it is possible to maintain those relationships romantically, and even if it's just a friendship. It does require more effort, you know, it's not as convenient as, oh, like you live 20 minutes away from me, like let's meet up in the middle and hang out. It's more of like, you very much have to evaluate, like, does this person mean something to you? Do you really want them in your life? Are they worth the extra work that it's going to take to maintain this relationship? You just have to plan out like your phone conversations, your Skype sessions, like are you gonna write each other letters, postcards, when are you gonna see each other next, when are you gonna visit each other? And again, this goes like for romantic relationships as well as friendships. Like it very much is like, you have to want it. You have to put forth the effort, and so does the other person, and you guys have to meet in the middle. And I kind of like that because it makes me feel like, since I really have to think about it, like, is this person worth my time and my effort? Then I feel like everyone that I do have in my life really, really means something to me. Like, they are really important, and I'm willing to do that for them. So it does make it kind of special, but so then we go into the topic of actually meeting new people. If you meet someone and you know you kind of like them, you vibe with them, whatever, like there is a certain point where you have to tell them, I mean, if they don't already know, like, hey, I live in a van, I live in an RV, I live in a car. Sometimes they'll think it's like the coolest thing ever. They're like, wow, I've always wanted to do that. Or they're like, oh, interesting, never heard of that, but that's cool. And then other times they're just like, whoa, what? Like, nah. And I think, unfortunately, there's a little bit of a gender thing there, because I feel like women might tend to write off guys for that reason more so than a guy would write off a girl for that reason. But this is also like, given the fact it depends on like how you meet this person. Because for instance, like if you're just traveling around and you go to like bars or something, you know, you're gonna meet everyday people. A lot of these people are going to live in the area, they're going to live in houses. So I think that's something to consider too, is like how you meet these people. Because if you compare it to like meeting somebody at a campground or something, or if they're familiar with the lifestyle, at least like they're aware that people do this, that it's a thing, that you can do it by choice, and there are very valid reasons as to why you're doing it, and all of that stuff. I think if you find like like-minded people, they're going to be more accepting of it and more understanding. So they won't just be like, oh, I don't want to date you because you live in a car, and that's weird. Versus like if you meet someone at a bar or something and they've never heard of people living in vehicles, like that might be, you know, it can come as kind of like a shock to them. And we are creatures that are wired for survival. So I think that when you're like dating, that in the back of your mind, it's always like, well, can this person provide? Is this a good match for me? And so if they have no idea that living in vehicles and a travel lifestyle can be sustainable and successful, then yeah, it's gonna catch them off guard and they might be taken aback by it. So again, I really think it just kind of matters like how you go about meeting these people, because it's gonna be a lot easier if you approach like-minded people. That way there's not going to be this stigma of like, oh, you live in a van, so I can't date you because you're basically homeless, you're a loser, peace out. You know what I'm saying? Also too though, just because somebody isn't like aware of the lifestyle, or at first they're not accepting of it, that doesn't mean that they're never gonna understand it or they won't like it. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you kind of just have to ease them into it. Be like, no, I swear, like it's fine, and like kind of explain it to them. Maybe once you get to know them a little bit better, if they're willing to get to know you anyways, then, you know, invite them to go somewhere with you, to check out your van, like, you know, because most people, once they really can see the full picture as to how you're not just some bum, then, you know, maybe they'll come around, and maybe they won't. But I mean, if they don't, is that someone you really want to be dating anyways? And so the last part of the whole dating section would be, how does living in a car or a van affect dating? So I definitely kind of touched on that already, with like people just either writing you off or you having to ease people into it and try to get them to understand what all is going on in your life. But I would say also it does work in the reverse way too, where at first they could be totally fine with it, And then, I don't know, maybe a couple months down the line, they're like, no, never mind. And I mean, that's fair, you know, they have every right to do that. But I definitely, like, I have had an experience where at first they were totally understanding of it. They were like, yeah, that's chill, no big deal. And then I think what it was is they saw it maybe as like a phase, like something I was going through and I was gonna like outgrow it. And then it turned into like not to be a phase, and that became very clear. And they were really pushing for a more traditional style life. And that wasn't me. It wasn't gonna be I wasn't gonna change my mind or my lifestyle because they wanted something different, but at the same time, like, I understood that they have every right to want something different. For me, it really came down to my sense of priorities. I'm gonna say that, I don't know how many times, but for real, it did. I mean, this was a good, solid relationship, but I hit like a fork in the road because it came down to the fact, like, do I want to pursue this relationship, or do I want to live in a van and travel and go rock climbing and do all of that? And I mean, I knew what I wanted. My answer was, I want to live in a van. I want to go traveling. I want to go rock climbing. Like, I mean, dating is cool and all, but it's not the most important thing in my life. This stuff is. So does living in a car or a van affect dating? Yes, 100%, in a bunch of different ways. But anyways, let's go on to relationships. So for relationships, I've seen them work 3 different ways. Either you don't live together, like one person lives in their rig and one person lives in a house. They live in 2 vehicles, which is equivalent to like each person living in their own apartment or their own house, or they live together in a van or an RV. So how does this all work? For the first one, not living together. This is the one that I have personal experience in because I've never lived in a van or a car with another person. So the way to maintain that is just to treat it like a long distance relationship. At least, like I said, in my experience. Because in all reality, you living in a van and like wandering around, being all over the place, that's no different than one person living in California and one person living in Minnesota. Minnesota. But it's no different than 2 people living in 2 different places but they live in houses. You know, people have long distance relationships all the time. They do present more challenges, and it's the same way with living in a vehicle. The only difference is that your location, whoever lives in the vehicle, their location is constantly changing. So sure, there's probably like a trust factor that comes into play there, but again, it's the same as long distance. You make phone calls, you Skype, you plan visits. Sometimes they come with you on trips. Sometimes you go visit them at their house or wherever they live. You know, you just, if it really matters to you, if it's really important, you're both gonna make it work. And just as with any relationship, communication is something that is one of the most important things into making a relationship successful. But I think, at least for me, in this regard, once I switched over to this lifestyle, it has been even more important. Again, going back to the priorities, because it's kind of like, just because, you know, I like someone and I connect with them and I've decided to, you know, be in a relationship with them, that doesn't really change anything about what I want to do with my life and my choices. So I've just had to make it very, very clear that, like, you have a full-time job, you live in one place, you have your house, that's awesome. But me, this is who I am. I am all over the place all of the time, and I don't plan on changing anytime soon. So as long as there's that open line of communication and they're okay with that, then I mean, it works. And then with people being in a relationship but having 2 vehicles, it's basically like you have your own separate apartments or your own separate houses. I mean, you've got your room, which is your van, your house, your room, whatever you want to call it, and you just like park next to each other, you know, you go to the same campground, you do everything together still, like, you know, you're cooking, going hiking, or whatever it is that you do during the day, but at the end of it, you have your own separate space. I think it's like a good way to kind of, you know, ease into your relationship. Like, you're not rushing anything by just like, oh, okay, well, I live in a van, you like this lifestyle, move in. But I do think it's something that's really interesting, and it's definitely something, freaking bear. It's definitely something that people do, and I could definitely see how it works. And then there's living together in a van or an RV or car. Wow, like, props to people who live with other people in really small spaces. I'm not sure. Okay, so like the reason that I got the van that I got is because there's very few people, very few people that I will travel with. Maybe, I think there's like 5 of them. And the reason that I got the van is because, you know, I knew that these people would be coming with me. They've been my travel buddies for like, I don't know, years and years. These are the people I always go places with if I'm not going alone. And the reason that there's only 5 of them is for the exact same reason that I give props to people who live with other people in really small spaces. It is just so personal, like so personal. You don't really get any privacy. And like for instance in my van, I have a futon mattress. I think it's a size full. For me, for one person, plenty of space. But when I have these people come and stay with me for a couple of days, like it's usually like there's the mattress and then I put my sleeping bag on one side and then their sleeping bag goes on the other. And there's like that much room between us. I mean, it's 2 people sharing a full mattress, which is like, you get really up close and personal with your homies, you know? And so that's why it's like, there's the sleeping thing and then like sometimes you gotta go to the bathroom, so it's kind of like, okay, well, look the other way and hum or something, even or just like going outside real quick, but you can't go too far from the car, you know, or they got to keep a lookout, be like, tell me if anyone's coming. Like it is this very like personal, you go through a lot of stuff together. So I don't know, just imagining doing that with like your significant other, whew, that's got to be really trying, you know. But hey, it's like if you could do that, then y'all should probably just get married because y'all gonna make it. So then there's the aspect of intimacy. So when it comes to this whole living like this, whatever, I think the intimacy factor requires more planning and more effort than if you didn't live this way. Because first of all, there's like the hygiene issue. Like, are you gonna shave your legs? You should probably maybe shower. I don't know, like whatever you feel you gotta do. But I think as far as like how you look at it, it's like you do have to remember that for people who live in vans, their van is their house. So anything that you would do in a house, you're probably gonna do in a van for the most part. And just because you live in a van doesn't mean that you can't go inside someone's house. If you're in a relationship and the other person lives in a house and you have the option of like house or van, you know, like you have options. So that is that. I hope I answered most of the respectful and legitimate questions about relationships that you guys have asked me, and I'll see you guys next time.